The phrase gifted kid syndrome comes from those who from an early age were referred to as gifted. They were set apart by their intelligence, apparently held greater achievements, all while they were about the age of 7. The real world unfortunately doesn't care how precocious you were in year 3, and being slightly better at spelling means niche in the long run. Let's be clear, there's people dealing with a lot worse than a bruised ego and a constant need to achieve. But that doesn't mean it's not worth talking about. And if you were brought up with your entire personality being the fact that you thought you were a bright child, then it's worth having a look at what happens when suddenly you're just a tired adult. Humans have always been fascinated by intelligence, especially when it seemingly appears at an earlier age. Mozart was writing symphonies at 5. Michael Phelps broke a world record at 15. Pascal made geometrical equations at 16, and I grew into my teeth at 19, all massive overachievers. The formal obsession with identifying intelligence in children started in the 20th century with French psychologist Alfred Binet. In 1905, Binet created what is now considered the first intelligence test, the Binet-Simon scale. This was created to, ironically, help identify children who needed additional help so that they could catch up with their peers, like an actual decent human being. That was when the Americans got involved, who decided to introduce us to the IQ era. They ranked little kiddos and put the smart ones on a fast track to self-loathing and burnout, so that was pretty class. This then also coincided with an era that viewed intelligence as a fixed and a heritable trait. Not to mention the fact that the IQ test was intentionally made to be biased to people with more privileged backgrounds, and therefore wasn't really a very good test of intelligence at all. So clearly it was always going to be a bit of a flop and never actually work out, but it did lay a foundation for helping to identify those students that needed more help and those that needed more of a challenge. For children labelled as gifted, these programmes then promised them special status and opportunities. They were often rewarded and praised and given accelerated paths to success, when actually the thing that could have been behind this giftedness could have quite easily been accelerated brain development or other socioeconomic factors. Once identified, many children started to internalise this expectation and success, thinking that they always need to reach a high level of achievement. This is only worsened by the fact that they weren't rewarded for their processes and their hard work, but simply the fact that they could get to the outcome that declared them as gifted. Success started to feel like an obligation, even though it was based purely on pretty poor analytics. I don't need to spell it out for you, but obviously this then started leading to perfectionism and the fear that slipping up just derailed their entire personality. Psychologists began to observe that these students started to face social isolation because they actually started to feel superior. They're having delusions of grandeur at this young age. And so then they started to have social anxiety and loneliness and other issues that kind of go along with that. When they then actually had to face real world challenges, they were in no way equipped to deal with them, because instead of just trying to do the task and find a way how to kind of get through regardless, because they can immediately get to the end goal, they just felt like failures. So one of the key concepts at play here is Carol Dweck's idea of growth and a fixed mindset. So in a fixed mindset, it's believed that talent and skill are static. You either have it or you don't. And when that's the case, being told something like "you're so smart" suggests that you have this trait and that you can't change or grow. Essentially, you're just reinforcing this fixed mindset. On the other hand, a growth mindset emphasises effort, development and learning. So being told instead of "you're so smart but you tried so hard" is instead something that suggests that you can actually cultivate your intelligence, you can cultivate talents and skill. Many gifted children then start to develop a fixed mindset. As soon as they face something that actually challenges them, their entire premise of being naturally gifted falls apart, and suddenly they just kind of give up because they can't be asked. Okay, so then there's two ways that these students can go forward. Either they say, right, I'm not going to do any sort of risk at all because I don't want to be able to risk my identity of being a gifted person. If there's a threat of it not working out, then I'm just going to avoid it at all costs. Or they go for the equally unhealthy approach of, right, I'm going to give myself no downtime. I'm going to work that much just to prove that I am in fact gifted, in the hope that one day they get some sweet, sweet praise. In both cases then, the underlying message is that if I'm not winning, I don't want to do it, which is quite bleak and quite depressing, but if you've clicked on the video and watched this far, then evidently it's quite relatable to you, I'm afraid. Right now, we live in a society that worships success, and not in a healthy way. There's hustle culture, there's grade inflation, there are these LinkedIn warriors. And the point is that we've decided to gamify self-worth and use the label of ambition in its place. There's just this constant battle to either be the best or at the very least look the best. Social media then just exacerbates this whole problem because students get exposed to these highlight reels of people's lives. They see other students who can seemingly work for 12 hours a day without a break, and that's all bollocks. And then it feels like you're having to struggle on your own. And so the answer we've all been waiting for, is there hope for these poor little godforsaken gifted children? And the answer is yes. Literally by shifting their mindset and perspectives, which is easier said than done, admittedly. The answer is that you simply need to be more comfortable at being crap at things. I mean, maybe this video is a good example of it. I'm sure the editing's quite dodgy. I don't look fantastic on camera at the minute. Many people have probably clicked off, but ultimately somebody has got value out there. As the point is that I'm not doing it to be the best at it or to kind of achieve this hustle culture thing. It's actually just that we're quite comfortable with doing something purely for the love of it rather than for the necessity of being great. I get that there are these certain thresholds you need to hit in life if you want to get to the next stage, but I think people are so desperate sometimes to just excel these that they sometimes forget what they actually wanted in the first place. So maybe, in my position, getting a vet degree. Maybe the point is that I wanted to get a first one year, but I only get a 2-1. But ultimately you take a step back and then think, why did I come here in the first place? Well, it wasn't to get a first, it was to become a vet. And so in that case, it doesn't matter what grades you get. As long as at the end of 6 years you become a vet, then that's my goal achieved. Maybe you want to get to university and you've been given an offer of 2 A's and a B, and you set yourself a target of getting 3 A stars, and on results day you only get 2 A stars and an A. And that can maybe feel slightly bitter, you can get slightly annoyed at that, but then you need to take a step back and work out, what did you actually want in the first place? I mean, maybe you don't even get to university that year, but then what happens is you reapply the next year, get into another university, and still get on the course you want to do. Ultimately, you have to look back and take a step and see what are the goals you're trying to get, not what are the ways I'm trying to excel my goals. If you miss out, then maybe the point is to take a step back and work out what you actually wanted along the way. Not a weird self-help cliche, but try and work out what actually was your goal. Do you have an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal? This is something you see other people talking about. You kind of have a primary goal that you want to get, and that is the thing that matters no matter what. It's maybe not something that takes lots and lots of effort, but it's the thing that you just want. Then you have another goal above that, which is, okay, this is something that I could get if I worked really hard. I'd have to kind of excel what I initially wanted. And then you have another goal, which is something that is if you get the perfect case scenario. And ultimately, if you have these goals laid out, you realise that you don't actually have to excel every single time to get where you want to in life. Increasingly, educators and psychologists are now starting to look at intelligence more holistically. They're looking at emotional intelligence, they're looking at traditional forms of intelligence. And ultimately the question is not how smart are you, but how you smart. Ultimately then, gifted kid syndrome is just when a load of us decided to internalise a load of pressure because someone once gave us a gold star and said we were clever. That doesn't mean it's not real and that it doesn't mess with your head. If you're out there panicking that your year 6 teacher had too much faith in you and you fell off, take a breath, because sometimes it's actually okay just to be fine. I mean, I'm mediocre at best, but I'm still moving forward. I like the gold star just as much as the next person, but these days I've decided not to let it determine my entire sense of self-worth. And I suggest you do too.